1 BC. Near the small village of Gaugamela, in present-day Iraq, two vast forces of men are engaged in a battle for the future of the world. On one side is the great king of Persia, Darius, commander of the largest army on Earth.
He probably had 200 to 250,000 men on the field.
On the other side is an army 1/5 the size, led by a 26-year-old named Alexander.
He was, at this point in his young life, a veteran commander.
Alexander's challenge is how best to utilize the phalanx and cavalry to his advantage. And what he does next will turn traditional strategy on its head. Rather than face the enemy head-on, Alexander arranges for his outnumbered infantry to face the Persian center at an angle.
He comes to the battlefield arrayed in what for the day seemed to be a strange formation. If we were to look at this in modern military terms, if we were to look at the way Alexander arrayed his Macedonian forces, we would say that he approached Darius's line of battle in a left echelon formation with his left flank refused.
The modern military terms mean that the Macedonian phalanx were arrayed at an angle, with the left side facing outward away from the battle, expecting an attack from the side. And the echelon, or angled line of attack, couldn't help but confuse the enemy, who had never seen such an approach to battle before. The Macedonian front line begins to march toward the enemy. On the front line of the Persian force are the Immortals, Darius's elite guard.
If one was killed, somebody else stepped up and got in their place. That's why they were known as the Immortals, because there were always 10,000 no matter what you did.
As the Macedonians get closer, Darius believes Alexander's angled approach has given the Persians an enormous advantage. Darius sees the open ground between the Persian cavalry and Alexander's troops.
Alexander's a smart tactician. He knew that if you offer a cavalry-heavy force open ground, that cavalry will charge across that open ground. It was a given in Alexander's mind that if he offered that open ground, Darius would take advantage of it. And he was right.
Darius orders his cavalry to charge the Macedonian left. The Macedonian left flank is under the command of Parmenio. He awaits the charge, knowing that his task is to keep the Persian line engaged. And on the other side of the Macedonian line, the young king does something completely unexpected. He turns his cavalry to the right.
In an unexpected move, particularly unexpected to King Darius, Alexander begins to ride parallel to the line of battle. A curious move in the eyes of Darius, who's concerned that Alexander might ride off of the prepared battlefield at Gaugamela. Or, more likely, Alexander might outflank him, might be able to turn to the left and ride down his flank, thus carving him up in detail. So Darius can't tolerate this. He sends signals to his cousin Bessus, commander of the Bactrian cavalry, the heavy cavalry, on the Persian left. He says, "Stop that." Bessus makes his move with his cavalry. They begin to ride parallel with Alexander.
This unorthodox tactic is unsettling to Darius.
Imagine this, 200 or 300 peltasts, all armed with these slings, all throwing metal objects or rocks into the enemy line of battle. Somebody's going to get hurt, or more importantly, somebody's going to get rattled.
With the peltasts hidden from the Persians, Alexander moves steadily across the battlefield. The hidden peltasts will be one of the keys to Alexander's strategy to win the battle. As Alexander rides, the front line of the Persian army begins to feel the full power of the Macedonian phalanx. Seeing his elite troops pushed back, Darius decides to deploy his most feared weapon, the scythed chariot.
A scythe chariot was basically a two-wheeled chariot with scythes, so blades attached to the wheels, so they stuck out horizontally, so they would cut down people who they hit.
200 scythed chariots, the supreme weapon of the Persian army, burst forth from Darius's front line. Most opposing commanders might have seen only two defenses against this onslaught. Either stand their ground or retreat before the giant blades and regroup later. But Alexander had devised a brilliant tactic to defeat them.
Darius launches his chariots. Alexander knew it was coming, and he had taught his men to trap the chariots.
It's a simple move that is still analyzed in tactical studies today, a move that is called the mousetrap.
No horse is going to come toward a bristling line of men with sharp, pointy sticks. So if you open a space, that horse will come into that space. He will be trapped. You can gut the horses, you can pull the charioteers down and kill them. And that's what he did.
In a sort of tactical judo, the Macedonians used the chariot's own momentum against them. Within minutes, the threat from the Persian chariots is neutralized. The chariot will never be used again as a significant weapon of war. As the battle rages on, Parmenio's left flank is under heavy attack and is near collapse. On the other side of the battlefield, Alexander continues to ride away from the fight. But why? While Parmenio struggles, Alexander and his cavalry continue to ride to the right, neither charging nor retreating. Darius's cavalry keeps pace to prevent the Macedonians from attacking his flank.
Alexander angled his force farther and farther and farther off of the killing zone, and he actually went kind of out of the whole prepared field that Darius had set up for him, making Darius pull cavalry out of his line to keep from being outflanked. And as Darius pulled that cavalry out of his line, the line thinned out in the middle.
And as that happens, the center of the Persian line cannot shift left to cover the hole that's left. Alexander then spots the gap in the Persian line of battle.
Alexander's unorthodox approach to the battle has thrown the Persian army into disarray and has opened a gap in their line. But how can he exploit it?
Like all great field commanders, he feels the moment when that door opens.
In an amazing move, Alexander turns his entire cavalry 160 degrees and charges toward the gap in the Persian line. The hidden peltasts now emerge and attack the Persian horsemen in a hail of slings, javelins, and arrows, preventing the Persian horsemen from pursuing Alexander and his cavalry.
I'm sure that from Darius's point of view, he must have been sitting there sending his scythe chariots out, sending his cavalry out, and just waiting for Alexander to be steamrolled over. And then suddenly he looked up, and there was Alexander's companion cavalry.
Alexander personally was at the apex of the cavalry wedge. In every battle, he was in harm's way.
Alexander and his cavalry charge into the gap, forcing their way through the line. The phalanx is the anvil. The cavalry is now the hammer. The Persian infantry is smashed between them. The Macedonian phalanx find no resistance. They charge forward. The Persian army breaks and begins to run. With the Persian center broken, Alexander has one goal now, the most ancient goal of all warfare: kill the king.